Do immigration officials have a right to search your cell phones and laptops as you come into the United States, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not? Listen to today's Immigration Wednesdays to find the answer. Hi, I'm Attorney Jeff Peak. Welcome to Immigration Wednesdays. Recently, last week, there was a case out of the First Circuit that talked and addressed the incident of whether or not Customs and Border Protection, who are usually the agents at the border and at the airports, can search your cell phone or your laptop without a warrant and even without reasonable suspicion. Now, you might think, well, how does this apply to me? You'd be shocked to know that in 2016, Customs and Border Protection did over 16,000 searches across the country of people's cell phones and laptops. And you'd be even more shocked to know just a few years later in 2019, that number skyrocketed to over 40,000 searches. So as we can see, this is an increasing tool they are using as people come into the country. Now, you may think, well, I'm a U.S. citizen, that doesn't apply to me. Well, actually, it does. And that is the case being litigated in Al-Assad v. Wolf up in the First Circuit. Now, a few years back, the Supreme Court ruled in a case out of California, Riley v. California, that as a incident to arrest search, if the police are arresting somebody, there's something known as a warrantless exception, search incident to arrest. They do not need to get a warrant. Until then, the Supreme Court said no. If you're talking about a cell phone, that is different. And if you want to search that cell phone as an incident to the arrest, as a search into the arrest, you need to go get a warrant, which of course requires probable cause. So now, go back to the border. There's something called the border search exception that they've always had, saying, well, it's different in the border because we have a heightened need for security reasons to look for contraband. Well, the one argument is, well, contraband is usually obvious. It's something you see. It's not like information about contraband. The counter argument to that is, well, what if they have child pornography on their digital files? And so the courts have gone back and forth. The different circuits hold different things. The government wants an absolute right to search. The First Circuit and lower district court ruling held that reasonable suspicion, which is a lower standard, you got probable cause, reasonable suspicion is a little bit lower, is required. The government didn't like that. They didn't want to have to do any suspicion. And the defendants, who were a bunch of U.S. citizens, permanent residents, said, we don't like that. We want it to be probable cause. We want it to be even higher. So what's going to happen? Well, eventually this is going to have to go to the Supreme Court because there's already circuits that disagree with it. Some say it's a border search exception. They don't need any explanation, any justification. Others say, no, you got to have reasonable suspicion, relying on the previous Supreme Court case out of Riley v. California. So it's going to be very interesting. But the answer to the initial question is, can they search your cell phones and your laptops? They probably can. And even if you're a constitutional lawyer and you know your rights to say, hold on, what's your reasonable suspicion of this? They're probably going to search for it anyways and require you to file a lawsuit after the fact to reclaim your property if they take it from you or make that argument. And until this gets uniformly decided by the Supreme Court, it's an area where, unfortunately, even us U.S. citizens could have our cell phones and laptops searched. And that's not a very comfortable feeling, especially when you feel like you haven't done anything wrong. Of course, I imagine it's not very comfortable if you've done something wrong either. So that's the answer to Immigration Wednesdays. It's very controversial, and we hope the courts get it right, because at some point, we gotta wonder, if we can just allow the government to do whatever they want, is it enough to say for our own security and safety they can search those devices? I think eventually, if they're allowed to search devices and bad guys know about that, they're gonna stop traveling with those devices, and who's really gonna get bothered there? Probably just the regular old innocent civilians like us. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'm Attorney Jeff Peak. If you have any search issues, criminal issues, immigration issues, and you need an expert to handle those, please call us here at Peak & Son. We'd love to help. Have a great week.